J103, Shining the Light. Hey, good morning. I'm Ted, and hanging out with me is John Graham. Now, John, would you say filmmaker? Is that what you would say?
Sure, we can go with that.
Okay, all right. Have you produced any other films or anything?
I've done some short films. This is talking about our first feature film. So
okay,
and fortunately, have a wonderful team of folks that have come around me that are going to help us carry the ball all the way to the goal line.
There you go.
Yep.
Now, and I'm so excited, too, about the topic and the plot and all of that comes in the movie, because Katie Beth Carter was a friend of so many people, and a friend is a good way to put it. She was a great friend. She's an angel now. She's in heaven. But she went to Heritage High School, graduated Heritage High School, was dancing for what's the name of the down at Jack State?
Jacksonville State Marching Ballerinas.
Ballerinas. That's what I was trying to think of there for them. Her mom and dad have been good friends of mine forever. I was her brother's baseball coach for a couple of years and stuff, and so just love that family to death. And tragically, she lost her life in an automobile accident heading back to college. So out of all of the different storylines and plots and things, why Katie Beth, and why did God give you that title and that topic to make a movie about?
Well, I, too, have known the Carters for a very long time. I actually am a minister, and I officiated their wedding.
Oh, sweet.
So way back in whenever it was, 92, 93, I don't remember now.
Yeah.
I was able to start Carter.
There you go.
I launched Carter in a way. But just have known them and loved them for many, many years. And my wife actually has known Amy since the 8th grade. They were friends in middle school, high school, and so
that's Katie Beth's mom.
Right. Sorry. And we like all of their connections were so heartbroken and shocked when the news broke. And of course, it comes out on social media where my wife and I are sitting there just watching TV or something, and it breaks. And I mean, we were just devastated for them. And I just kind of kept an eye on that story like everybody did. And so when I saw Taylor Swift make the donation to the GoFundMe account, I was like, wow, this is amazing, And then Channel 9 did a news story on a young man. They went to Heritage, and they interviewed some of the faculty and the students, some of her friends. And one young man just really stuck out in my mind. There was a guy who was a high school kid, a friend of Katie Beth's, and they said, yeah, we knew her as Kind Katie. And he reaches in his wallet, and he pulls out a piece of paper. He said, Katie gave all of us a note of encouragement before she graduated. And it had a scripture verse, and it had some sort of an inspirational thing. And this one in particular said, be bold. So every message was custom tailored to the person she was handing it to. And when I saw that, I thought, here's a young man in high school carrying around a note in his wallet that's not from his girlfriend.
Yeah. And
it must have really made a huge impact on his life. I've got to dig deeper. And I kept digging. And then just a few weeks later, I learned that those students have raised $60,000 to build a school in Nicaragua. I was like, oh my gosh, God, I've been praying, what's the next story for me?
Sure.
This is the next story. So me and my producing partner, Josh, we went up and we met with Jason and Amy. I've never been nervous about much of anything, but I was so nervous that night because I'm talking about stewarding their daughter's life story.
Yeah.
And they prayed about it some, and after a little bit of prayer, they said, yeah, we want to see this happen. That sounds great. So Josh and I set out to write the script, and early July, we got approval from the family, and now we're trying to push through to the next level.
How difficult was that, coming up with the script that takes this young lady's life and all of the incredible things that she did, the mission trips to Nicaragua and all those different things, and yet put that into words, which will become lines, which will become, what we watch in a movie?
It was at the same time one of the hardest things I've ever done and one of the easiest things I've ever done. Katie Beth's story almost wrote itself in a way because, it's a life story. We've got a lot of mile markers to pull from. It was also hard because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I have to do right by this girl's life.
Sure.
And God really guided that process every step of the way. Josh and I sat in his kitchen, and we had Post-it notes just covering the walls with little, plot points and character ideas. And it took about 2 straight days of just getting all that pulled together, and then several weeks of building the script out. And those who know the Carters very well, are once they finally do see the film, they'll see some things that didn't really happen the way that they remember them. And the reason for that is you've got a girl's life you've got to tell in an hour and 45 minutes. And so there are some things we had to kind of massage a little bit to get the story moved down the line quicker. None of it is out and out just falsehood, but some things just kind of changed a little bit to help tell the story. And
like that one plot line when her little brother's baseball coach was just the biggest inspiration. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah. We're going to come back and talk some more with John Graham here about the movie. And listen, if you think this is something that you want to see, one, A, but also B, how would you like to be a part of in reaching the world for Christ through this young lady's story? There's a way you can do that, and we're going to tell you how coming up next. J103, Shining the Light. Hi, I'm Ted, and hanging out with us here in the studio is John Graham, filmmaker, producer, and he's been given the assignment, given the task by God to produce this movie on Katie Beth Carter, a young lady who lost her life in a tragic accident, but a young lady who in just her 18 years of life, 18 years of life, had done so much for the Lord. With the movie, how far along when do you start filming? How do you cast this? Is it going to be at the actual Heritage High School in Catoosa County? How do you do all that?
Well, where we are, we have a completed script, and we have started a very unique fundraising opportunity, which I'll tell folks about in just a second. Once that funding is in place, along the while, we're seeking out actors and attachments, is what we call it. Folks that would say, yeah, I'm willing to be a part of this project. Hopefully we'll get some pretty noticeable names and faces. Yeah. That helps drive the process a little bit further. Once we're funded, then we'll shoot, and it'll be about a 6-week pre-production kind of a plan, and then we'll start shooting. And it really all depends on how fast those funds come into place.
Sure. Now, when you talk about funding a film like this, I mean, of course, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, Back to the Future, all those mega million films to produce. What's the goal that you have in mind for this film? Our
ultimate goal is $1 million. That gets us at a place where we can do a lot of the things that we really believe this film deserves. I know it sounds like an amazing, unsurmountable kind of amount of money to most folks. It does for me, for that matter. But that really is kind of the entry level, and so many reasons that would bore your audience to death if I tried to explain it. But that's kind of where we're going. Our first mile marker in that is $100,000, and that $100,000 will then get us a casting director. It helps us. We'll actually produce a little snippet of the film with substitute actors in a lot of cases, but just to help folks visualize what we're visualizing. So those all things happen, and we're in the middle of that initial fundraising effort right now.
You think first thing comes to my mind is, well, do a Kickstarter campaign. That works for a lot of people and things, but there's something else that God has just made available and provided that is a whole lot better than a Kickstarter program.
Man, it really is. And like you, I mean, we actually did an Indiegogo, which is another thing like Kickstarter. We did an Indiegogo campaign several months back just to get some initial funds. You can't really do much without a lawyer in place and without some of these, things. So we needed some initial funds, and that happened. We have those funds in place. We stretched them as far as we possibly could.
Sure.
But I just learned recently in 2016 there's new legislation, part of the Jobs Act that came through, and one of the parts of that legislation opened up startup investors to everybody. Whereas before that, if you were going to be a part of a startup and be an investor in a startup, you had to have a particular net worth of $150,000 or more. And the reason for that was to protect investors. Lots of people can come around with great pitches and
take everything you have.
Yeah. So, avoid Ponzi schemes and these kinds of things. So what they did, though, is they said, well, what if we limit the amount that people can give, but allow anybody to give? And so what they've done, it's called Regulation CF, which stands for crowdfund. But don't be confused. It's not like a typical Kickstarter. In this case, anybody with as little as $100 can become an investor, and that term investor is different than donor or gift. It's an actual investment with a hopeful promise of return on that investment.
And with any kind of investment whatsoever, I mean, if you've got your 501c3 or not your 501, your retirement package or anything like that, I mean, you're investing in it with hopes that it will pay back. But in this case here, when you're funding a movie about a young lady's life who touched the world, and I'm sure it's going to be very evangelistic, very true to the Carter family. it's more than just investing money in cash.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you're investing the dividends that you could receive back for this are so much greater than getting the cash that you put in back, or potential of more than that. So
right. Yeah, it's a double dip, so to speak. You get the actual financial return, hopefully, if the film is successful, then the investors are successful. But you get an immediate eternal return on that investment.
Sure.
And that is because the Word of God's going to go out. You know, there's two major themes in this script, and really two major themes that come from this story. So I don't want to divorce myself, so to speak, from the actual life of Katie Beth. But the two major themes are the redemption of grief. We're all going to face grief. We're all going to face those opportunities where we just don't understand why this happened. But the redemption of that grief is what beautiful things God pulled from those ashes. And in this case, you've got scholarships, you've got an impact that just continues to grow. It's amazing.
School.
You've got
Nicaragua.
a school where kids are getting an education, and they're getting a Christian education. It's just a beautiful thing. And so that's the theme, the first theme. The second thing is, you know, I'll be honest with you, faith-based films sometimes get a little bit of a bad reputation based on what people perceive as a lower quality or whatever. I have two things to say to that. Number one, there are bad movies in every genre, you know, so before we throw faith-based films under the bus, let's recognize that. But secondly, in the case of this film, you know, when we were thinking, do we want to come out and brand this as a faith-based film? You have no choice. That's who Katie Beth was.
Right.
She lived her life with Jesus as the center, and it informed every decision she made. And in that, we had to present this film authentically. We don't preach. It's not a real hard preaching kind of a script. Her life preaches for itself.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful thing to watch her struggle through some conflict she had in her senior year in high school and break through. And then we're like, oh, man, she's gone? What? And then to see the beauty that comes from that, it's just a really amazing story to tell. And I wake up in disbelief that God has handed it to me to steward.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about that and looking forward for folks that believe in this vision to see this story told to the world.
So, okay, when you talk about vision, what would you like to see as the end result of this production? What would you like to see the impact of this film?
I want people, I don't think we've ever lived in a more divisive time in our culture. I think people are looking for the things that separate us rather than the things that connect us.
Yeah.
And the gospel is the only solution to that. But our world is so anti-Christian right now, they almost have to be eased into it. Who can't identify with tragic loss? I mean, at some level, everybody can. And to see this story played out, I want people to walk away from that film, and I want them to think, I want to live a life that causes that kind of impact. I won't say I want to live a life like Katie Beth, because Katie Beth would say, don't say that.
Yeah.
Live a life like Jesus, because that's what she did. And so that's my goal. I want people to walk away from that film and go, yeah, I need to be kinder. I need to be more faithful. I need to be tuned in to the things that God might be telling me. And ultimately, I would absolutely love for folks to say, tell me more about how to understand what this gospel thing's all about.
So if somebody's sitting there right now and God is just stirring their heart to say, yeah, what are you waiting on? Let's get involved. Let's become one of those investors right now. How can people find out more information about that?
It's really simple. Two things. KindKatie.com. Katie's name was spelled K-A-T-I-E. So KindKatie.com. Every bit of information you could want is right there. And also, if folks aren't driving, but they'd like to text and be a part of a text kind of a connection, they can text the word Katie to 21,000. 21000. You can find out everything there.
All right, John, please keep us posted and make it back in here as the movie gets going. I know once it gets going, you're going to be busy with this or that, but I would love to keep our listeners plugged in and along the way and let them see the process of this.
Absolutely. I can't wait till I'm calling you and saying, we're starting filming, we're in Ringgold, and we'd love to see you there, you know?
And if you need an extra, let me know.
Yeah.
You know, I got this DJ part down pat, I think.